Group Policy Settings. In this nugget, we're going to be talking about group policy settings, and we'll start off by talking about the basic categories underneath computer and user configuration. That would include things such as software settings, Windows settings, and administrative templates under each one of those. Then we'll also be talking about some specific policies such as some auditing things, some user account control things, specific group memberships that appear on certain computers that can be controlled with the group policy, and also even how to prevent installation of certain types of devices. Today is a marvelous day indeed. Guess what? It happens to be my birthday. That's right. I'm only 45 years young today, so feeling pretty spry for an old guy, I guess. And in celebration of my birthday, I think it'd be a great idea if we just go outside the box a little bit here today. And even if you're in your cubicle where other people can hear you, just break out in song and sing me a birthday song, all right? Ready? Here we go. 1, 2, ready, go. Happy birthday to James. Happy... I kind of got a feeling you're not really singing out there, you're not really joining in, and not really willing to wish me a happy birthday, so kind of hurts my feelings a little bit. But that's okay. By the time we're done with this particular nugget, you're going to be so happy about group policy things that you might have learned, you'll probably be willing to just sing me the song anyway, no matter who can hear you around your cubicle or wherever you are. But if you're a little shy, I'm willing to offer an alternative. In lieu of singing me a birthday song, you can feel free to send me a birthday present instead. That's just the kind of guy I am. I'm willing to be flexible like that, okay? Alright, well, regardless, I'm willing to unwrap a couple of presents here for you guys, and those are going to be some group policy items that we can take a look at to give ourselves a little bit of context in group policy. Now, I've created a few policies here. Some of them were there by default, and some other ones I have created for various purposes. But one reason why I'm here in the Group Policy Management Console, which I introduced to you in our last video, is that I want to show you some key policy settings. Now, notice that what I've done here is I've created a policy here, and let me expand that out, just called unlinked policy, do not use. Now, this is very often what I will do in an organization when I have a policy where I just want to poke around in there and I want to look at some of the many settings, because remember there's thousands of different policies with Windows Vista and all down-level operating systems. So I just want to poke around and see different things, but I don't want to actually link it to the domain or to an OU over here or something like that. So I say do not use over there. That's mostly for other people's benefit, other administrators, so that they'll know that this is my playing around policy and we don't actually want to use it for anything. But that being said, let's go ahead and right-click on this policy to edit it so we can get an overall idea for the broad categories of what we see in a policy. And a lot of the settings that I'm going to introduce you to, by the way, are really just broad categories. I can't possibly begin to show you all, 3,000 or so policies individually. But I want to show you the broad categories of them, and some of them we'll just touch on lightly, especially because we are going to cover them in a different video later on. For example, for security settings and things, we'll address some of those same things later on. As a quick review, remember we have computer configuration and user configuration. Computer policies, anything that I set in down here, any of those settings are going to apply when the computer starts up and before I get to the Control-Alt-Delete log-on screen. Okay? Once I log on, then it will apply the user configuration settings, because it can then identify which user I am. Therefore, it correlates that to whichever organizational unit or domain I'm in, and then it will apply whatever appropriate policies have been configured for me. And again, that happens during the log on. Now, to split hairs just a little bit here, when you have a new policy, maybe someone just set up something for the user here, then when you log on for the first time, you might not actually see the effect of that policy, because what happens is Windows will deliver to you a desktop environment first, and then in the background it'll read to see if there's any new policies. Well, by then it might be too late to really apply the policy, so in order to actually see it take effect, you'd have to log off and then log back on again, because this second time when you log on, now it knows that it's supposed to apply a setting, and it will apply it to you at that particular point in time. And I only say that, I don't think that's probably going to be an exam issue, but I only say that because as you experiment with this on your own, and I strongly recommend you do this in a safe environment like virtual machines or something, but as you experiment with this, you're going to get frustrated at times. You're going to say, wow, I just turned the policy on, and yet nothing's happening. Well, you might need to run GP update, you might need to log off, log back on again, or you might need to restart the computer. Any of the computer configuration settings, normally you have to restart for. User configuration settings, if you need to give it a kick in the pants there, you'll usually simply have to log off and log back on. Alright, so let's go ahead and take a look at our broad categories here. For computer configuration and user configuration, we're going to briefly look at this software settings item. Notice that within this, I can go to software installation, and I can right-click to choose a new package, and then I can browse for an MSI file that will allow it to install software to any computers that are underneath this scope of management. Remember, the scope of management, again, is also an important thing, because wherever this policy was, if it was a live policy that I was actually wanting to turn on for something, and I wanted to deploy software, I would link it to the organizational unit that my computer was in. And then that software would go ahead and install. Well, we got a lot more to cover with software installation at a later point in time. It has a very similar function to the user software installation that we have down here, and we again will return to that at another point in time. Going back up to the computer configuration, however, we see under the Windows settings, we have scripts. We have, in addition to log on and log off scripts, which will appear down here for users. For the computer side, we have startup and shutdown scripts. Now, many times these are useful for cleaning up temporary files, if you have a script that wants to do that, or cleaning out anything that might be cached that could be security sensitive, for example. So you do have startup and shutdown scripts, or if you might want to have a script that applies without the user actually seeing some of the things take place, then they won't see that during the computer startup necessarily. And then we also have deployed printers. This one's pretty cool. I have to be honest though, and I've actually been able to contact some people that are deeply involved in group policy and kind of in a roundabout way, even somebody at Microsoft, and talk to them about the fact that this doesn't always work very well. It's supposed to be that you can right-click here and you can deploy a printer, and then you can just browse for it, or you can enter in the UNC path to a particular printer, and it should set up the printer for you once you click on Add over here. The fact of the matter is, we found that it doesn't always work quite right, so there's still probably a couple little bugs there, or maybe there's just some other issues. But anyway, that's what that's about. Security settings, this is going to be probably the biggest part of what we have under computer configuration. With the security settings, we have several different things going on here. There's account policies. This is where we'll configure our password policy. Okay, and right now on this one, of course, I haven't configured anything, so it's just going to say not defined for all these. Let me expand that out a little bit. And we'll address these again in more detail in a little while, because we will address this in security. But you can see what some of these different things are that someone explained themselves, the password length, when they expire, and so forth. The account lockout policy, how many times you can log on with an incorrect password before you get locked out. Kerberos, which is the security mechanism that Active Directory uses to authenticate users and computers. So that's what these security settings are right here. Then we have several other different ones. We have an event log where you can keep track of the size of the logs, and the logs are what identifies error messages or informational messages saying that a service has stopped or a service has started, or those kinds of things. Again, we'll address a lot of these as we go as well. One of my favorite ones here is restricted groups. And to show this one in depth is far beyond our scope, but I really do like it a lot, and I'll tell you what it's about. You see, when you go to a computer and you look at the membership of the administrators group, for example, or some other security-sensitive group like backup operators or something, you might, in a corporation, find out that different people have been added into that administrators group that should have never been there. It was the administrator's best friend, and he decided to, allow somebody to be an administrator of their own computer, or something like that. Or, equally bad can be that somebody has been removed from that administrators group, and therefore they're not able to administer that computer properly. They should be there, but they're not there. Maybe it's a help desk security group that should have been nested inside of administrators or something. Well, with restricted groups, I can forcibly apply group membership to the local administrators or any other security-sensitive group that I want. Oh, heck, I can't resist. It's just so cool, I got to show it to you anyway. So again, we're out of scope here, but that's all right. How would I work with this? Well, first of all, let's just take a look at, how about my virtual machine? I'm just going to make a quick connection over here to Vista Client 01, and we'll take a look at its security group membership. So here, let's go ahead and take a look at Vista Client 01, where I've logged on as administrator, and I've quickly gone to Computer Management to go to the groups right here. And then I've checked out the membership for the administrator's security group. Now, by default, you'll have the local administrator account, and if it's a member of a domain, the domain name, which is Nugget Lab in this case, and then domain admins. So those are going to be your two default groups for a corporate environment. Now, In this case, I've also added a couple of other local accounts. There's a local Vista admin security group that I've added, and the trainer account that's a local trainer account, in addition to the fact that I have a domain trainer account. This one is a local one, okay? So those are what I've got. Well, it could be that this is really not what's supposed to be going on. I look at this thing and I say, wait a minute, who in the world is that? They're not supposed to be a member of this group. And who's this joker? That guy is not supposed to be a member of this group either. So this is going to be a problem. And I go around throughout my entire department and I see there's all kinds of strange memberships in the local administrators group. And then my help desk security group is not a member of any of the administrators. Well, it would be nice to add them in there, but boy, that would be really cumbersome if I had to go to each individual machine and manually change the group membership. So what I'll do here is, first of all, I'm going to go back to my domain controller here, and I'm going to go ahead and go to, I'll just go down here to users for the time being, and I'm going to create my help desk security group. So I'll just do a new, and I'm just going to quickly go to group, and I'll call this help desk. Okay, and it's a global security group, which should be fine for our current purposes. The next thing I want to do here, though, is I need to go to my restricted groups and choose Add Group, and then let me point something out here. This is pretty critical. The temptation here is to click on Browse, because after all, we do have a Browse button there, right? And we're trying to adjust the administrator's security group. Administrators, if I can spell correctly, and then we click OK, and then nothing. Okay, I must have misspelled it. Administrators, there we go. STRATORS. There we go. So now I've got administrators in here, and then it's easy to click OK, and then just go on through whatever else I need to configure this. That will be a problem for me. I should really cancel this right now. Why? Because when you click Browse, what it does is it looks for the administrators out of the domain. Okay, so we don't really want to do that. This will actually change the administrator security group in the domain. We're really trying to change the local administrator's security group on each workstation. So in order to do that, we'll right-click again and choose Add Group and type in administrators. Hopefully I spelled it right this time. Administrators. Yes, okay, great. So we click OK, and then it pops open this dialog box where we simply click on Add, and we say the member that we want. And now it's okay to click Browse because I'm trying to look for this from the domain. Remember I had a help desk? Help desk. I think I spelled it with something with two names, one word. Okay, there we go. Help desk, okay. And then I'll click OK again here, and then we would be all right. Now, this in reality would still cause a problem because it's an explicit membership. So what would really happen is over here on Vista Client 01, if I go back to my administrators group, it'll remove everybody. It'll remove the local Vista admin and the domain admins, which I really didn't want to happen, and the trainer account here. But it would also add in the help desk. Okay, you can never remove the actual administrator account. So that could be a problem here. So let's just go ahead and test that out and check it out and look at it. Okay, so I'm going to click OK and go back to my Vista Client 01. And I can just cancel this for the time being because we're not really adjusting it from there. But now when I do a GP update, let me just do that real quick. Then the policy will refresh, and it should affect the group membership on the administrators immediately, as soon as that's done refreshing. So I'm just going to go ahead and go back to my computer management by right-clicking my computer and choosing Manage. And then let's see if that's updated. Okay, it's updating right now. And now it's finished. So now I go back to my local users and groups, and I go back to my administrators security group, and look, what do you know? Nothing's different. And why is it like that, folks? Well, I did that to teach you people a lesson. That's why. Because what's really gone on here is, remember that when I worked with that policy, let's return to the policy now. Where is it? It's right here. This is the policy. This is my unlinked policy. So if it's not linked to anything, it won't actually take an effect. Okay. Now, only for our lab purposes right now, I can take that and drag it up here just for demonstration, link it to the domain or wherever that computer account happens to be, but I'll just go to the domain for the time being. And now what I can do is when I refresh this policy one more time, we'll see that this membership here is going to change. So now that the policy has refreshed, we'll go back to our groups and administrators, and voila! Look at the change there. Now I have only administrator, because remember you can never change that regardless, and I have help desk. But guess what? If I'm a domain admin and I try to log on or administer this computer, I can't. I just locked myself out of it. The help desk folks, they can get into it, but I can't. So that's the other warning I wanted to just present to you there relating to that policy. Remember, when you work with this restricted groups item, and let me go back to it, under our security settings, and our restricted groups, when you're within this, you have to explicitly add in whoever it is that you want to be a member of that. And I'll just enter in domain admins, or I could type it in, or I'll just browse for it here. Domain admins. Okay. And OK and OK. And now if I go back here and once more refresh this policy, we'll see that the group membership here will change. And so now once again the policy has refreshed. Now once again when I go back to the administrators, look, it's added back in domain admin. So that's really way more than you really need to know for our exam purposes, but this is one of my favorite policies and extremely very useful policy. So we'll go ahead and went ahead and showed it to you here. Alright, then in the background I went ahead and unlinked this policy because once again, this is one of those policies that I keep around just to play with and not actually use for production. And then we have system services where we can adjust whether or not a service starts up or not, what kind of security permissions are on it, whether it starts up automatically or whatever. Registry and file system items are useful for setting permissions on for specific registry keys and or files in the file system. Okay, and then whatever permissions I set there would propagate to all of the recipients of this policy. Wired settings, for security settings, you can also do Windows Firewall with advanced security. This is actually pretty good. A lot of you will probably have a third-party firewall product, but if you don't, Microsoft's firewall with Windows Vista is actually pretty good, and you can configure just about any port exception you want right here within this policy. So if you wanted to open up a port, for example, for a given application of some kind, well, you could do that, and there's just an awful lot you can do with the firewall settings there. We also have a wireless network policies here so that we can configure whether or not you want your wireless clients to use ad hoc networks and so forth, but that's just another possibility there. Public key policies, we can use our public key policies for EFS, or the encrypting file system, and a number of different other things that we can see here, so we can establish the proper trust relationship between other parties. Another one of my policies that's a real favorite is the software restriction policies that we see right here. We're not going to address that quite yet because I will address that at a later point in time, but that's just one way that I can make sure that a given application never runs. We also have network access protection, which is a new feature that especially comes to light under Windows Server 2008, and this is useful for quarantining, for example. Maybe a laptop user that's been out of the office for a couple of months, maybe they're on a sabbatical or something, and they never got the virus update for the latest fast-moving virus. Well, now when they reconnect to your office, they might have that virus on their laptop and then infest your organization with it. Well, network access protection checks for virus updates and Windows updates and the like, and if you don't match up with the most current updates, for example, then it puts you in a quarantine or a network access protection. That's what that's about. And then the only thing you can do is to update, and once you successfully have, it can rejoin you to the rest of the network. IPsec is an extremely secure way to encrypt your network traffic so that even if someone intercepts it, they're not able to read that traffic. It's a little bit complicated, but it's very, very effective. And then quality of service as well, which is a way of prioritizing your network traffic. Now, all of these things, and you don't need to memorize this, but all of these things from this point all the way to the top there are mostly client-side extensions, or CSEs. These are things that are like built into core operating system components like DLLs and so forth from within Windows. There can also be third-party products that plug in their own client-side extensions, and this is really starting to come to light more now under Windows Vista and Windows Server 2008, especially because Microsoft has bought at least one company in this point in time that has already built a lot of those, and since Microsoft has bought them, then they've been able to implement a lot of those features from within Windows Server 2008 now. Okay, but for administrative templates, these again are all client-side extensions. Administrative templates are going to be all registry settings, and your ADM files, your template files that configure all of this, are normally going to be administrative template settings. Now, ADM files, and I'm going to address this later as well, relate to down-level Windows like 2000 and XP or 2003. But these administrative templates under Windows Vista are actually going to be something called ADMX files, and they're XML-based files that we can use. Now, again, I'm just going to quickly address some of these broad categories. You can specify different control panel items. There's a lot more of that under the user configuration. Network settings, again, you can see there's a lot of different things that I could do with this. And if we expand that out, for example, we see here that we can configure offline files. There's a lot more features here that we have now under Windows Vista than we did under previous operating systems. So that you can, for example, add additional features to your offline file cache or prevent access to it and so forth. And offline files, again, are something that I showed you when we looked at redirecting, using redirected folders, for example, and we saw offline files in that example. Again, quality of service, SNMP, or simple network monitoring protocol, which is different ways of monitoring what happens on the network and tracking different systems on the network. This also requires some kind of a software package that is able to receive SNMP messages. So it's just not strictly a Microsoft thing, but it can configure things there. SSL to secure your network settings, and Windows Connect Now. And this is simply where when you make a new connection, you've probably seen this with a wireless network. When you see a new connection, it'll pop open dialog boxes and ask you questions about it. Well, it can prohibit, well, there it is, prohibit access to those Windows Connect Now wizards. That's what that's about. Different printer settings that we can do here as well. Again, I'm not going to exhaust all of these, but you see an ID here for a number of different things that we have available for us here. System is pretty populous. There's a great many settings here. For example, if you have access to down-level clients or other kinds of operating systems that don't understand all the security measures that are taking place with Windows network traffic, then you can kind of dumb that down a little bit, and if you had to, you could reduce security, but hopefully we don't have to do that. Windows components, again, this is the other most popular portion of administrative templates, and we can do quite a lot here. We have new features such as BitLocker here, where we can turn on BitLocker, where we can back it up to Active Directory services because there's keys involved there that allow us to decrypt our data. And BitLocker is a method for encrypting an entire hard drive. It's not quite the same as EFS, where we can encrypt files one at a time or something, for example, or encrypt folders. This is going to back up an entire hard drive so that if someone steals the laptop, then they don't have the ability to access it because the whole thing is encrypted. But that's just an example of one of these other Windows components, and again, we have a whole bunch of other things here that we could access there as well. Now, under the user configuration, we've already looked a little bit at software settings, so let's move on down to Windows settings. We can use Windows Remote Installation Services, and this gives us choice options. We don't really actually see this very often, especially in light of the fact that we are now using Microsoft's Business Desktop Deployment, or the BDD, or Windows Automated Installation Kit instead. There's better solutions there, so this is kind of a throwback to a legacy method. Then we also have log on and log off scripts, various security settings, such as, again, the software restriction policies, which are also available now underneath the user settings, user configuration. Folder redirection, which we looked at in a previous nugget. Again, policy-based quality of service, deployed printers not only for the computers, which we saw further up on the top under computer configuration, but also under user configuration. And Internet Explorer maintenance, where we can set up something like the default home page, for example. We can set up important URLs and things like that. We can add things to their favorites and the like. So those are other items that are available to us. Now, once again, client-side extensions for the most part up here, but when you take a look further on down, under administrative templates, under down-level windows, that'll involve an ADM file, which is actually going to make a registry punch. Again, under Vista, it's going to be an ADMX file, which is an XML-based version of the same type of thing. And this will also be registry punches for all of this. And we saw some examples in a previous video where we looked at control panel items, where we can prohibit access to certain interface items and the like. Now, this also is probably going to be where you will spend the majority of your time when it comes to configuring policy for the users, because this controls virtually every aspect of everything they can see or do in their interface. So this is largely going to be what you work with there. Now, again, there's way too many settings to enumerate them individually, but I do want to point you to a document that shows all that to you. This is something called the Group Policy Settings Reference. Make sure that you search for this on Microsoft.com. Their URL has changed, so I don't want to give you a stale URL there because they do change these from time to time. But just look for Group Policy Settings Reference and also include the word Vista in your search at Microsoft.com, because if you don't, then you might get the XP version instead, which has quite a few fewer settings than this one, and this will then just identify all of, and if I click the All tab down here, this will include all of the different policies that are available and where the policy path is if you want to find out where it is. Okay, so and also this identifies which ADMX file, which we'll address a little bit what that is. We'll talk about that here as well. So all of the different policies that you can possibly come up with. Another thing you can do with this is if you want to use the auto sort filter. You can do something like that here as well, and it might make it a little bit easier to search for some of these things. You can just go for the auto filter there. So if I do that, by the way, then I go up here to the top. This is going to say I want to see all the things relating to users or machines. Machine being the computer policy, and I want to see anything related to a specific location in the policy path. Then this also, if you scroll over to the further to the right, it identifies the name of the policy and which operating systems they're supported on. For example, if I just wanted to see only those things that were related to, Windows Vista, then I could scroll down here and I could say at least Windows Vista, and then it would give me, I think there's 163 in this one section that I've filtered underneath here. But this shows all the new settings here for Windows Vista, and it shows the registry location as well. So again, a great deal of verbose information, but really pretty cool in terms of the document that Microsoft has made available for you. If you stick around for Windows training for Windows Server 2008, this gets the step even better. I'm just going to give you a sneak preview of that. With 2008, you can go through here and actually search for different kinds of keywords, for example. Whereas right now with Windows Vista, you really don't have quite the same facility to be able to do that. 2008 will make that easier as well. You can say, I know there's something having to do with, the screensaver, and you can search against the word screensaver here to try to find the policy that you're interested in. Now here I've returned to my list of group policy objects where I've got an item here called Audit Policy, and if I right click on that to choose to edit it, I want to just point out a key setting here as well that might be very important to you. That's underneath the Computer Configuration and Windows Settings and Security Settings, where we have a local policy here for Audit Policy. If I want to keep track of any time someone attempts to open or change, for example, a given file or a folder, then what I need to do is to audit the object access. Similarly, if I want to see any time that somebody works with a printer or tries to print to a printer, that's an object as well, and I can audit object access there as well. And finally, the other kind of an item that this can audit would be registry. So if I want to see any time someone tries to modify or edit a registry setting, then the audit object access will also be able to do that, and you can define the policy settings for success and or failure as suits your purposes. Now, for most of these kinds of things as well, it's not enough just to audit the object access, because it's not like it'll object everything in the entire Active Directory universe now. I then also have to go to those objects that I want to modify, rather to monitor and see anytime someone's edited them or worked with them, and I have to turn on auditing for them. So, for example, if I wanted to audit the registry, let's go to regedit. That's what we type to be able to edit the registry. So type regedit and press enter there. And then with the user account control prompt, I'll go to a particular location. And I don't even remember what I was doing here, but here we're just in a particular key, okay? So if I want to see anytime someone tries to modify this Adobe Viewer key, then I'll right-click on it and choose Permissions. Then I'll go to Advanced, and we do the same kind of thing, whether it's a printer, a registry key, or a file or folder. We do the same kind of thing. We go to the Advanced Permissions, and then Auditing. And then I click on Add. And maybe I want to see anytime a specific user or anyone who's a member of a specific group or whatever. If I'm going to try to do broad access, I might just type in everyone here. But I'll just, for my purposes, I'll just type in trainer. Okay? And I want to see anytime the trainer account tries to do something with this. Maybe even if they just tried to read that particular key. And I'm going to leave it there just to be real simple for the time being, just so that we can see some action take place in the event log. So I'll click OK there, and then I'll click OK here and close all of this up. And now that particular portion of the registry, this registry key, is now subject to that kind of monitoring. Of course, I may also have to update the policy once again, so I'll again do a GP update. And there we go. Now then, to save time, I've gone ahead to the location where this audit setting will be monitored. This will be under Computer Management, System Tools, Event Viewer, Windows Logs, and Security. This is the security log. And I've gone ahead in advance and looked up where this auditing has taken place. And that's right here. And if I click on the, there's not much room to see things here. You got to scroll back and forth quite a lot. But it does say that it was security auditing. and there was an audit success. It was able to identifies that I was able to successfully make a change there. If I need more detail, I can go to the details friendly view. It says exactly which SID it was that corresponds to this user account and which domain they were a part of. It says who accessed it and what they were doing there, and say this is where they went. Okay, so this gives you an idea of the level of granularity that you can get to in determining the audit permissions and being able to audit object access. Now then, just quickly here, I've gone to another part of the Group Policy Object Editor where I've created a user account control policy that's underneath Computer Configuration, Windows Settings, Security Settings, Local Policies, and Security Options. And all of these user account control items right here, you really need to go through each one of these and read the explained text and understand what each one of them does. You don't need to memorize the explained text verbatim, and most of these explain themselves pretty well even in the description right here, but you should know and be very familiar with each one of these. So for example, the default behavior for myself as the administrator, the elevation prompt for administrators in admin approval mode is that whenever I do something that requires admin access, it gives me that continue item, right? So if I, for example, right-click my computer and choose Properties, then if I wanted to look at the Advanced System Settings and I click it, notice the shield there, that indicates that I need user account control permission. When I click on that, this is the user account control item that I'm talking about there. Now, right now, by default, I only have to click on Continue, and it gets me, what I want. I could change the behavior of that, however. So if I double-click on this policy to define it, I could say Elevate without prompting, so that would not give me any prompt at all, and that's less secure, of course, because a passerby could see my unprotected desktop that maybe I forgot to lock when I went to the water fountain or something, and they could just perform an administrative function under my credentials. The other thing I could do to increase security would be to prompt for credentials. Now, the default behavior is prompt for consent. That's what you've been looking at all along, where I just click Continue. But to increase security, I could click Prompt for Credentials and click OK. And I'm going to go ahead and close this policy. And I also need to link it now. I'll just put this user account control. Again, I'll link it to the domain, but we very often just link this to whichever OU it applies. And I'll go ahead and update the policy. And the next thing I'll do is, now that once the policy updates, I'm going to go to the same exact function that you saw me do just a moment ago, and we'll see the new behavior. So now then I'll simply click on Start, and then I'll go up here to Computer and Properties, and now when I click on one of these little shield items, look what happens. Now it's asking for a username and a password. So it's not just enough to be logged on as an administrative account. Now I also have to have these credentials, and the advantage there is, if there's a passerby that comes by and attempts to perform an administrative function while I'm away from my desk, they still have to know some kind of an administrative credential to be able to get in. Now, one of the things I'm about to show you here is not an exam-specific item. You don't have to know about this or memorize it for the exam. However, I do think it's one of the coolest things that's now available under Windows Server 2008 as well as Windows Vista, a new policy that will allow you to prevent the installation of certain types of hardware. And to kind of illustrate that, I've connected a USB webcam to my computer, and I'll just show you around a little bit, so you have some sense of context for how all the magic happens out here in my office, here in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm pointing right now at the monitor that I normally use to teach from, and that's what you're looking at right now. It's kind of a picture within a picture kind of an idea there. And then it's connected by a KVM, or a keyboard video mouse switcher, so that I can sometimes also switch over to this computer, which is my just normal desktop production computer, and that's where I check my email and stuff like that. And if I decide to do so, let me focus this too, by the way. I think it's out of focus. That's a little bit better. And if I decide to use the KVM and switch over, I can get to a dual-headed configuration. And you can see, I think you can see, that I've got both of those computers now are really on the same item right here. So if I open up a window, for example, you can see that I actually have the ability to work back and forth between the two monitors while they're connected to a single computer. I'm kind of working blind right now because I can't see. There we go. Now I'm back over to this machine. Okay, so this is what we're working with, and this is your friendly instructor, James Conrad. let the light adjust here. There it goes. So here's your instructor, James Conrad. You're probably thinking, boy, I wish we could have gotten a better looking instructor than that guy. But hey, you're stuck with what you got. So there. Of course, I don't know. Maybe I'm Sweaty Freddy. So that's what we've got. We've got a webcam here that we need to go ahead and shut it down so that the person... What in the world is that thing? That's underneath my monitor. I don't know what that is. Oh, that's one of those Cadbury cream eggs. Here, I'll show you. I got that back during Christmas from my mom. She gave it to me. I guess I better eat that thing before it melts underneath there, but anyway. And of course you can also see a whole bunch of dust under there and cables that lead to who knows what. So I got to get rid of this webcam so I stop embarrassing myself. How about that? Now, in order to make this work, I need to do a couple of things. Number one, I've gone to computer management here, and one thing that I need to do is to uninstall this item. But before I do that, I also need to know the hardware ID of it. So I'll right-click on it and choose Properties. And the hardware ID is going to be important when it comes to identifying which devices to disable. So by going to the Details item, I can go to the drop-down list that we see here and go to Hardware IDs. And then here I have a couple of different values. This is the most specific. This is the most general. The reason why I might want to do this one would be I might not want to only disable this specific brand. And the first part of this, there's a unique identifier for each brand. I think this one's an Intel webcam. And then it'll show the exact model number is involved in this here somewhere as well. For my purposes, maybe I want to just block all of that brand of webcam, regardless of the model number. So I'll right-click here and choose Copy. That's all I need to do with this for now. I'll just click on Cancel. And then what I want to do is to uninstall it. So I'll right-click on it and choose Uninstall. And I can also delete the software if I want. That's okay. It doesn't matter either way for my current purposes. Now we see that particular camera has gone away. Then I've got my group policy object item right here, my group policy editor, and I'm going to link that to, in just a moment here, if I go back to my my server, then we can see that on this server that my computer account, Dell Client 01, is in the computer's container in the domain. Now, normally for computer accounts and users, I like to drag and drop those into an exact OU of some kind to give me more granular control with policy, because there's no way to link a policy to this container, the computer's container or the user's container. So if I want to apply a policy to it at all, I'd have to go to the site, which doesn't happen very often, or the domain of nuggetlab.com, and that's what I'm going to do right here in my Group Policy Management console. I've got a prevent webcam policy already, and I've linked it here to the domain. Okay? Now, let me just go ahead and show you how I can configure that to prevent the webcam from operating. So now let me go ahead and take a look at the policy that I've got right here. I haven't actually configured this. I just created it and named it. But we need to actually go ahead and right-click on this to edit it to make sure that we can no longer use any devices here for this webcam at least. And then I'll go to Computer Configuration, Administrative Templates, System, Device Installation, and this is all new for Windows Vista, and then Device Installation Restrictions. And now what I want to do here is to, let me expand this out, prevent installation of devices that match any of these device IDs. Now remember, I copied the device ID earlier, so now I'm going to double click on this item to enable it, and then I have to specify a device ID. So by clicking on Show and then Add, I can paste in that USB device ID, click OK, click OK, click OK, and then I can close that up. Now remember, you don't have to save a policy. It's already OK. It's already done as soon as you click on OK. So now this is linked to the domain. Remember, you do need to update the policy sometimes, so I'll do a GP update if I want to manually trigger the updating of this policy. So now let's go ahead and see this thing take place. I've already unplugged the webcam, but I'm going to go ahead and plug it back in now, and we can see down here that it's trying to install the device driver software, but it was the installation was prevented by policy, and I click on Close here. That's really all I can do now. I'm pretty much stuck, and Sweaty Freddy will no longer be able to access this webcam. And if we look at the computer management item, it now only shows up as unknown device, and it can no longer install. So what do we have to do with this? First of all, you have to uninstall the device, okay, and then unplug it. And then the next thing you would do is to create the policy, refresh the policy, and from there on, we should no longer be able to install this device. Let me just show you another kind of cool thing, however, just to FYI. If you want to give administrators exceptions to that, I can right-click here and choose Edit for this policy. And yeah, there we are. Then I can go back to the same policy location under Computer Configuration here. And let me just get to there real quick. And then I can say Allow administrators to override Device Installation Restriction Policies. Now I'll click on OK for that, and I happen to be logged on as the trainer account, which is a domain admin and full level admin account. So if I refresh the policy again, and then unplug this particular device, somehow I got a search item there, but if I GP update it GP update. I guess I better pay attention to what I'm typing. Then now once the policy is done refreshing and I plug the device back in, we'll see that because I'm logged on as an administrator, it will allow me to install that device. But a generic user would not be able to install that device. So then quickly here, I'm just going to plug this device back in. We'll see plug and play taking place. It wants to locate and install the device driver software. I can click OK there to allow that to happen. And then what it's going to do is it's going to download and install the software. And indeed, now it says it's ready to use, so I click on Close. I can go back to my computer management now, and we can see that that device has properly installed, and there it is. Now then, having returned here, let me point out this policy here as well. Just might be another one to be aware of. It says prevent installation of devices not described by other policy settings. This relates specifically to the allow installation item here and the allow installation item here, which allows devices of certain setup classes or specific device IDs. If I enable this policy and I also have either one of these configured, then what happens is only those devices that are explicitly set up in one of these other two policies here will be installable. Anything else that's not there will be prevented for installation. In this nugget, we talked about group policy settings, and we started off first of all talking about the various policy categories. Under computer and user configuration, remember, we have software settings, Windows settings, and administrative templates, and a lot of those settings I'm going to be addressing later on in other videos, or we may have also already addressed many of them in previous topics. But we can't really address all 3,000 or so policies individually, but you should at least know the basic categories of them to the point that you could probably fish around and find a policy setting that you're looking for. And remember again, Microsoft does make available an Excel spreadsheet that identifies every policy for you, and it's very easy to search against. We also took a look at several specific policies, such as the ability to restrict certain hardware from being installed. What else did we look at? Auditing. We looked at how to audit certain things, including files and printers, but in our example, we looked at registry changes. And then we also took a look at a very important thing under Windows Vista, and that was user account control. Alright, that's it for now. Now, don't forget, if you haven't already sung Happy Birthday to me, go ahead and get started now, alright? So have at it, and I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.